I have always been fascinated with the question on why some artists end up as household names and others just kind of stay in the background, even if they have just as much talent. Because think about it, they can have the same amount as label support, just as much talent, and also the same viral moments. And yet one becomes the next Billie Eilish and the other gets stuck in what we call a pop limbo. And for a long time, that was Tate McRae. She had hits, the dance skills, so much talent, yet her brand just wasn't branding. She felt sort of generic, just like she could disappear into the background of pop culture. And then almost overnight, she shifted from being generic to everyone knowing who she is and what her songs are. She topped charts and partnered with brands like Adidas, Skims, Rode, and so many more. She became a Gen Z pop icon kind of fast. So today I want to break down the rebrand that saved Tate McRae and made her a pop star, plus what all of us graphic designers can learn from it. Let's talk about Tate 1.0, the background famous era. Tate's story started strong. She was always meant to be a musician and a performer. She even was on So You Think I Can Dance and was a finalist. But she utilized her time during the pandemic to post her singing on YouTube, which really helped her have some viral moments and her moment to break out as not just a dancer but a singer as well. She even got pulled up on stage by Justin Bieber as a teen. Let's just say movement was always her first language, but her music career really took off when her song You Broke Me First went viral. I can remember when I first heard this song, me and my husband, we were in Sweden and I just loved it. There was something about it that was just so, I don't know, calming, relatable, kind of sad, but it was such a vibe. The song racked up billions of streams, charted globally, and put her on late night shows. On paper, she looked like she was going to be the next pop princess. But here's where the problem was. People knew the song, but not the girl behind the song. I'm sure it's so hard in such a saturated industry of music to really stand out, but that is why I find Tate's story so interesting, because she had to rebrand herself and she had to step into what was so authentic to her to stand out amongst all the other amazing talented artists. Back then, as Tate 1.0, her brand at the time didn't give audiences anything to hold on to. She really had no signature look or no clear positioning. I feel like a really good example of doing this sort of really smart positioning and strategy is Billie Eilish. Billie has such an indie cool vibe to her and a lot of sad girl anthems. Another good example is Olivia Rodrigo. She had that nostalgic teen heartbreak and almost a little bit of rock and roll. But Tate McRae was packaged in this slightly generic, too polished pop image. She had the dark hair, the moody visuals, and the edgy outfits, but paired with some sad girl anthems. You Broke Me First definitely had that sad feeling to it, and I think that kind of stuck her in this corner that was what she needed to make music around. Let's just say the aesthetic did not match the music, and when that happens, the branding starts to feel inauthentic. So the result of Tate 1.0 was that she had visibility, but not memorability. I feel that maybe she was playing a little too much in everyone else's lanes instead of focusing on what makes her different. This is such a helpful tip that any graphic designer or entrepreneur can take away from, because it's so important to have a personal brand and strategy that makes you stand out and makes clients want to work with you specifically or want to be attracted to what you are creating and working on. The rebrand. Enter Tate 2.0. So let's fast forward a couple years, because the Tate McRae we know now is almost unrecognizable to the Tate we knew back then. Her new branding is sporty, it's cool, it's confident. Think the slicked back hair, elevated streetwear, clean but really playful styling. It feels authentic to her age, her personality, and her energy, and it's not forced into a category or style that did not really fit her vibe. But I think the most important differentiator that Tate leaned into, which was the smartest thing she could do, is her dancing background. I honestly have been playing the VMAs dance choreography over and over again. I absolutely loved it. I think it was so good. It was so it was like a performance. I feel like instead of just standing up there and singing and having all these backup dancers, she truly performed and did that dance. And I think it was eye-opening to all the people who maybe didn't know Tate yet, that she is not just a singer, she is a dancer, and that was the best thing she could have leaned into. So instead of the choreography in her performances being an afterthought, it became the centerpiece of everything she was doing. The performances, like I just mentioned on the VMAs recently, but also Greedy and X's, they aren't just music videos, they were taking her personal brand and bringing it to another level. So they really positioned her not just as a singer who can dance, but a singer-dancer hybrid. And honestly, that's kind of rare in the Gen Z pop world. And I truly feel that is what makes her instantly recognizable and probably is what helps her sell tickets for people to go and see her live because they know they're getting a pretty awesome performance. Not only did she lean into dancing, which was so smart to help her stand out, but even her visuals started to tell a story. Leaning into the sporty aesthetic was so smart because she not only got to collaborate with the F1 movie, but she also leaned into that kind of like hockey, cool girl vibe. And I feel like that was a missing piece in the Gen Z pop world, was an artist that had that sporty athleisure look. And I think maybe that's why I find myself really wanting to listen to the music and actually watch the music videos, is because I love that style. And she's really tapping into a target audience that is so perfect and specific for her personal brand. When everything in your personal brand and your offerings align, everything feels more authentic, which in turn helps you become more successful. Think about it. Sabrina Carpenter is another great example of a Gen Z pop star. And when you hear Espresso, I'm sure there's a lot of us that think of the Espresso song, and she really leaned into that and even got collaborations with Dunkin' Donuts and so much more. So it's really important to find what your personal brand is and to lean into that full-heartedly. The reason I love talking about this is because it wasn't just about the aesthetics, it was about the overall strategy and leaning in to what makes Tate different. Let's talk about brand partnerships and cultural alignment. Another reason this rebrand worked so well is because of the partnerships. I sort of touched on this a little bit, but I know that my husband and my friends didn't even know about Tate until watching the F1 movie and hearing her music and even the music videos that went along with the movie. Tate and her team did a great job of aligning herself with brands that reinforced this new image of the sporty, cool girl aesthetic. Even Adidas tapped into her sporty, high energy vibe. Skims gave her that main pop girl stamp of approval, joining the same club as Sabrina Carpenter and even Ice Spice. And you guys know I recently talked about Hailey Bieber and her brand Rhode. Well, they actually positioned Tate within that cool girl, minimal Gen Z aesthetic, which fits Tate's vibe so well. I just love looking at this because collaborations that we might see on an everyday basis, they're not random, they're very strategic and planned out. The collaborations create cultural associations, and by linking herself with aspirational and really popular brands, Tate elevated her own positioning. She wasn't just selling her music or her dance performances anymore, she was also selling her image, which, as I mentioned before, is that athleisure, sporty, confident, and Gen Z aesthetic. And for a brand designer, this is so inspirational because sometimes the smartest move isn't launching your own brand. It can also be aligning with other people in your industry and using that authority to help each other grow. Okay, so let's talk about why this time did Tate's branding and entering into the pop star world really work and stick. This rebrand finally landed while the other ones might not have, because it felt authentic. Instead of being styled as a mini Britney or an overly mature pop act, Tate leaned into what actually makes her unique: dance, confidence, and sporty energy. At the end of the day, she is an athlete and she leaned into that, and I just think that is so inspiring to see. Secondly, it was cohesive. The music, the visuals, the styling, the partnerships, everything felt aligned and clicked. You weren't getting those sad ballad, sad girl anthem songs with a sexy photo shoot. You were getting an entire story of who Tate is. And thirdly, it is memorable. The sports cars, the revolving doors, and the high energy performances, these are what really stick as her visuals. They stay in your head and they tie back to the music. I know for me, if I were to see a pop star singer wearing maybe a hockey jersey, I immediately would think about Tate McRae. Or if I saw a sports car in a music video, I would probably think of Tate McRae. And fourth, it was aspirational, but still relatable. She feels elevated and a really cool kind of like rich girl, clean aesthetic, but not out of reach. And that's the sweet spot that I think a lot of brands are trying to hit. Overall, I think Tate McRae is such a good example of leaning in to what makes you unique as a personal brand and how to lean into that in such an authentic and really clean, beautiful way. So let's talk about the takeaways for designers and all of you brand builders. First things first, start with authenticity. Don't try to force an image that just doesn't fit or align. Your audience will feel it and know that it's not aligning and probably not want to stick around. Number two, find your differentiator. What makes you different as an artist? For Tate, it was dance. For a brand, it could be your tone, your specific style, your specific niche, your colors, or even your process. And thirdly, make it cohesive. Every touch point should tell the same story. The music, the visuals, the styling, how you show up, all of that should feel cohesive and not completely different from what they saw last week. Because at the end of the day, consistency is what creates recognition. And the next thing we can learn is to create sticky associations. Whether it's a signature color, a symbol, something that your audience can latch onto and recognize who might be behind it. This is so important for any sort of brand and designs that you're creating, is to make it feel recognizable and unique. And that is what makes a brand work really well. When you're driving down the street, if you see a sign, you most likely know what the brand is or what they're about. And when that doesn't feel aligned, it's really, really clear that they're not going to be attracting the right audience. And lastly, don't underestimate partnerships. This one is so important to me lately. I've been really trying to lean into building a team and delegating tasks and connecting with people and building a community. And I truly feel that is so important. And in Tate's story, this was so helpful for her to lean into the brands that wanted to work with her and that aligned with her personal brand. Whether that was Adidas or F1 or Skims, those brands just felt so authentic to what she was sharing already. And I feel like that's so helpful for designers to hear, because if you are collaborating with other designers or you want to share your work with other designers and build together, that can be so helpful instead of just doing it all on your own. Sometimes the fastest way to elevate your brand is to align with others who already hold the space that you want to occupy. So what is the biggest lesson here? I don't feel that all of us need to go and do a complete rebrand and change everything about who we are. You really don't need to reinvent yourself overnight, but I really think it's important to clarify and lean into what makes you different. Once you do that, you can build a visual language around that. You can show up with those values and you can stay so true to that to keep that consistency and cohesiveness and attract the right audience you want to work with. Tate McRae went from background famous to one of Gen Z's most recognizable pop stars. And that didn't happen just because of a hit song, but because of a rebrand that finally made her memorable and unique. And that's the most fascinating part about rebranding, is that sometimes the difference between forgettable and iconic is not just the talent, it is also the strategy. So let me know if you guys enjoyed this behind the brand breakdown of Tate McRae, and let me know which brand I should break down next, whether that's a personal brand, an artist, or a brand that we use every single day. But if you enjoyed this video, it would mean so much to me if you gave this video a like, subscribe to my channel down below, and I will see you all in my next one.